strategy for early stage companies is a very hard sell because they're focused on making marketing happen, driving brand awareness, leads, and sales. When you say to them, you got to take a step back and do strategy, most of them say, many of them say, I don't have time for that because we need to move the business forward. The other thing when it comes to early stage SaaS companies is that you could argue that the barriers to entry are dramatically lower than what they used to be, especially when you get in situations where low code or no code. So going from an idea to a product can happen a lot more quickly. But what I find in my experience is that companies are very product driven, very sales driven, and they fall down when it comes to marketing. And even at a basic level, when it comes to having a narrative that is clear and doesn't even have to be compelling, but just has to be clear and makes people curious or inspired or motivated. I'm interested in your perspective on the common mistakes that early stage SaaS companies make with their positioning and messaging. You and I know it's important,
Yeah.
but a lot of entrepreneurs see it as something that's a supporting actor as opposed to being one of the stars of the show.
Yeah.
So, where do they go wrong? Is it ignorance? Is it just not appreciating the value of positioning and messaging?
Our take is like startups are hard. Like by definition, there's so many not only known unknowns, but there's unknown unknowns everywhere. Like they're partially built things that haven't been done, haven't been tested. I don't think it's as much ignorance as it is from the get go, really figuring out how to create new value for folks in especially emerging markets where a lot of startups play. Just challenging right off the bat. And there's a lot of mistakes. We built our whole business essentially on the mistakes that people run into. And I'll list off a few. The biggest one that often is the tip of the spear that cascades into all these other challenges really is just a lack of specificity. And it's a lack of specificity on what problem are you actually solving? Who are you actually solving for? And then going to your comment of clarity is like, what are you building to do that? When you have no, I would say, more broad sense, and so a lack of specificity of what you're actually doing, that you start to overbuild your product. You're like building stuff, throwing it against the wall, which, and here's like the rub, like in the beginning, you have to be broad. Like your early stage positioning is going to be broad. Even thinking back to what we did with Fletch, product marketing for early stage companies, it's the whole world, it's the universe. And you have to start there. But really, the ones that do the best job at their positioning recognize that they need to get specific pretty quickly and start to narrow, because that's where you can get more control and actually shape the narrative and shape the messaging around it. The other things we see beyond just being specific in the positioning and messaging is probably the big ones, leading with benefits. And we fundamentally believe that's a mistake for early stage companies. There's a lot of great marketing stuff out there that's don't talk about your product, talk about all the value and the benefits it provides. And it's not bad advice if you're in an established business and everyone knows what you do. But that scenario is not startups, it's anti-startups. No one knows what the hell you do. No one knows who you are. If by leading with benefits, you're like playing the big boy grown-up game in an arena where it just makes no sense. And so we firmly believe that to counter that, you should be speaking to your capabilities, effectively what someone would do with your product, and use that as a foundation point to then get to the different benefits they have. That's the biggest thing. The other one that comes to mind is these companies have a tendency to want to do branding up front. And some folks have called us the anti-brand marketing group, which is partially true. I think when we look at startups, there's very few that actually compete on brand in the early days. Our point of view on brand is actually this like collection of everything you do and say over a long period of time. And what brand marketing is at later stage companies is like the tagline and this higher valued story. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in the beginning, you just have no clue what that is. If you just say, look, we're branded now, we're this bigger picture thing, it goes back to leading with benefits. And we think that's just fundamentally broken. And so it's ironic that even with us building Fletch, we've never thought about building a brand. We've always just been very tactical of who we're helping, how we're serving them, and what we do. And now we have people bump into us. They're like, your brand's so strong. How did you build it? And we're like, we weren't thinking about building a brand. We were just thinking of like, how do we deliver the most value? And when you do that repetitively for years, you're going to develop a reputation, which ultimately is the same thing as the brand. It's all
I want
positive. Those are the big ones.